What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Alex. I am so happy you're here. This morning I have been just kind of piddling around in the garden. I watered everything and then I actually harvested some Swiss chard. It's actually right here next to me. It's a lot less fluffy than the last you would have seen it. I'm gonna figure out how to cook that. I don't know what it's gonna turn into, but it's gonna turn into something. And then I started to prune my tomatoes, and I thought maybe you guys would be interested in how I do that, why I do that, and it'd be interesting. So I'll just take you along for the ride. I'll turn you around and show you exactly what I'm doing, and then I'll probably just time-lapse the rest of it. So let's go. So I'm currently about to prune this side, all of these tomatoes. I just finished doing all of the tomatoes on this side of the trellis. So all those are already pruned. And I'm gonna start from this end. Actually, the sun's gonna come from over there first. So I'm gonna start from this end and work this way to try and stay out of the sun as much as possible. Yes, this is my coffee cup. Thank you for noticing. So on this tomato here, we have a bit of a weird base trunk, if you will. But I basically start at the bottom and prune off any leaves that are lower than the lowest hanging fruit. My phone is placed slightly precariously, so I hope this works. So I start down here at the bottom of the tomatoes, and first I remove any of the leaves that are hanging lower than the lowest fruit. So this is my lowest fruit, and I'd say this leaf is under it. I'm just using some cheap pruners that I got from like Walmart or something. Actually, just a few minutes ago I was using my kitchen shears, so I mean it doesn't have to be fancy. This leaf is only slightly lower or the same height as the fruit, but I'm gonna go ahead and remove that. And then this one isn't lower, but it's like overlapping, and I don't want there to be pressure on the fruit branches, so I'm just gonna remove that one also. And this one. Okay, so I think that's all of the lower leaves I will remove on this specific one. I'll remove this one so that you guys can see easier, but that's a different tomato plant. So that was all of the, I guess this is my lowest hanging fruit, but that's okay. So that's all of the lower leaves that I care to remove. So then I'll go through and try and find any suckers growing from leaf nodes that I've already removed leaves from, or growing from the armpit of the plant. So I'll take you and kind of show you a slow movement up the plant as I would to try and find any suckers. So I start down here and I'll do the right branch first. So I know there's no suckers up to right here, so here's a leaf. That's the armpit, so this is a sucker. Remove that. It's a lot easier to remove them when they're small. So then you keep going up. This one, armpit, no sucker. This one, armpit, no sucker. This one, armpit, baby sucker. I'm just gonna pick that out. So this one going up, armpit, I've already obviously removed a sucker from there, and I don't see a new one growing, so that one's fine. So then just keep going up the plant. Armpit, oh, no sucker. Armpit. At this point, oh, that's no sucker, that's a sucker I already picked off. And then here's just the growth tip of the plant. So there's no suckers on that one, well, on that side of that one. So then we go back down to the bottom, trace up the left side. So this right here is technically a tiny little baby sucker. I'll pick that off. And then just find the armpits. So this fruit armpit doesn't have a sucker. This fruit armpit doesn't have a sucker. And then just keep going up. So that leaf armpit, no sucker. This one has a baby sucker in it. The next armpit, no sucker. The next one is a fruit bearing, no sucker. Just leaf. Leaf with a sucker I already picked off. Fruit cluster, leaf node, no sucker there. And I can see that there will be a sucker right here, but the growing tips of the tomatoes are the weakest part of the plant, and so I will wait until that one's a little bit older before I pick it off. I'll wait to pick it off until this part of the plant is a little stronger, and that's not going to hinder the growth in any way, so it'll be okay. So that was all the way up the left side of that plant. So that plant didn't have very many suckers or leaves that I had to remove, which makes sense because this is one of the ones that started fruiting first, so I kind of look at this one more often than the others. So then we'll go ahead and do this left plant, and I'll explain that one also just while you're sitting over here so it doesn't get too tedious. And then I'll just time lapse it for the rest, and I'll put it on one so that you can hopefully see better what I'm doing. So I start at the bottom of the plant and I check just all the leaf nodes for any suckers, and I don't see any. So then I choose the right branch first just to keep it consistent with how I'm doing it, and I'll go all the way up that branch looking for suckers. There's no leaves on this one that I think I need to remove. The fruit up here on this one is kind of high, but this is a good enough space in between the bucket, about 18 inches probably, that I'm not too worried about it. So I'll start on the right side. I don't see any large suckers, but there's a baby sucker on a leaf node that didn't have a leaf anymore. Another baby sucker, the next one up, leaf node, no sucker, no sucker. And I'll just go all the way up the plant, removing any suckers that I find. So here's something interesting. This is a fruiting branch with some flowers on it here, and there's some leaves here at the bottom, but those aren't suckers. You can kind of tell that they're coming out of, let me focus. They're coming out of kind of the edge of the leaves, not actually in the armpit. Actually, in the armpit, there's not anything. So those are just leaves. They're not suckers. This one, a tiny baby sucker is forming. I'll just use my nail to kind of scrape that off. And we go up. There's a tiny sucker here. Just take that off. I've already removed one there. There's none up here. So the right side of that plant is done. So now I'm going to set you back just a little bit and just go ahead and prune the rest of the tomatoes, and you guys can watch it on a time lapse. Bring you in for this one because it's a bigger sucker than the other ones that I showed you. It'll be easier to tell what I mean. So here is a leaf node with a tiny baby sucker starting to produce in it. That tiny little leaf there. So I'll go ahead and pick that off. But if you don't catch them when they're babies, they grow into about this size, which is still easy to just pick them right off. But then even further than that, you let them grow for another less than a week probably, and you get this whole thing. That is all a sucker. This one's a little bit harder to pinch off, but you probably can still just, snap it off. So that's about how big that one is. And that's probably, at max, a week's worth of growth, because I did this same pruning technique last week. So, there's that sucker. I also take this time while I'm pruning them to trellis them up on the top more, just wrap them around the string as they're getting taller, just because I'm already over here looking at every single plant. I might as well just get as much done as possible. Sorry if I seem distracted. I started looking at this spider on my tomato leaf that's doing things. Just making a web, crawling around. You're welcome here, little guy. Take this time time to remove any pests that I find. That one was a black caterpillar. No sir, do not belong here, thank you. This is why it's good to just have eyes on your plants. You don't want to prune your tomatoes? Don't prune your tomatoes. Still come out here once a week and maybe look at what's going on. You'll see if anything broke, if anything is being eaten by bugs that you don't want it to be. If you're overwatering, you'll see that your tomatoes are going to split, and that'll let you know. Like, you can figure out a lot of problems that you have just by spending enough time in your garden and noticing how what you do changes what's happening. You guys see that wasp flying around? He's actually making a nest in my kitchen window, and I don't want to kill him, but I don't want a wasp in my kitchen window. So I'm struggling with that debate. I do react very harshly to wasp stings. One time, I've only been stung by one time, and it was one of those red ones, and it stung me here, and my arm was swollen down to my fingertips and up to my neck. So imagine if it stung me in the neck, how swollen I would be and how potentially bad that could be. So I probably will have to get rid of him, even though he's probably killing pests for me. I'm sorry, little wasp. Also remove lower leaves just to make it easier for you to tell which leaders you're keeping. So I don't top my tomatoes to force them into 2 leaders. I just let the lowest sucker grow into its own leader and trellis it from there. So sometimes it's hard to tell if I left it there on purpose or not. These 2 specifically don't have string trellises of their own yet. So I almost just cut this whole one off, not meaning to. So be careful. I'm going to bring you guys in closer for this one because it has a lot going on. Okay, so this here is a sunflower. We're just going to be looking behind that. Can you get away from me, wasp, please? Jeez. Personal space, man. Okay. So, let me try to I'm going to take off a couple of these leaves so you guys can kind of see. This is a potato leaf variety of tomato, so the leaves are humongous and can get in the way. So, this tomato here, I'm doing kind of a living mulch type situation in this bed, so excuse that. We have one little fruit branch cluster here, and we have this second leader that I left intentionally, meaning to trellis it up. Obviously, I didn't trellis it up. But then, it started to curve, and it's growing kind of funny, so now I'm not sure if I really want to keep that. Maybe if I'm able to, like, twist it back this way, it'll be okay, but I'll have to see. But if I go a little further up the tomato, there's now this sucker, which is also very large. It's right here. So if I wanted to, I could cut off this one and still have 2 leaders on this tomato because this one is pretty strong and has a thick base against the main stem of the tomato. So either of those could stay as suckers. This sucker has its own sucker. So, if this is the main leader of this lead, anyway, this is where I just removed one of the leaves, and this is a sucker. So that sucker had its own giant sucker. There was a lot going on with this one. This end of the tomato trellis is way more bushy. So I think I'll probably remove the bigger sucker and let the smaller one live and see if I want to actually keep it once the fruit starts coming in more. So it's a sad day, but I'm going to go down here and just chop it. And then this whole tomato plant, basically, its own plant, is going to come out of here. That one I did leave intentionally at first, so that's why it got so big and there's flowers on it and everything. But I might try to root that and give it to someone as a whole plant, because that is a whole plant. So that actually freed up a lot of space right there. That's a lot more airflow. That's great. So I'll set you guys back up for the time lapse. Alright guys, well, as I said, I was just piddling in the garden in between other things that I have to do today, which is probably what I'm going to continue to do today, and I'll take you guys along. So, thanks for helping me trellis my tomatoes, and I hope that was helpful. I'll see you next time I come out to the garden for whatever reason today.